The twin suns of Echostone were setting behind the jagged peaks of the Blackreach Mountains, painting the sky with streaks of orange and violet. Down below, the colony settlements glowed softly, like small jewels scattered across a dark velvet. Yet the largest and most forbidding structure of all stood in the mountains themselves. Blackreach Prison, a place humans whispered about but never visited, unless they had no choice. For most people, the name alone was enough to strike fear. For Alara Quinn, it was a ticket to survival. Not that she wanted to go there. Not that anyone ever did. But she had no choice. Alara had been born in the crowded domes of Crescent City, the largest settlement on Echostone. She was a linguist, trained to decode alien languages, a rare skill in the frontier colonies. Her work was respected, but it didn't pay enough to cover the rising cost of medical treatment for her younger brother, Joran, who had been sick for months. The colonial medical credits were expensive, and her savings had already been drained. When she learned about the Frontier Marriage Program, a controversial government initiative, she almost laughed at the absurdity. Humans were being paired with dangerous, isolated men, some of whom had been exiled for years to earn survival benefits. She didn't laugh. She signed up, and then she received her assignment. Dane Rourke. The moment she saw the name, her stomach sank. Every colony official she asked tried to avoid her gaze. Every miner she spoke to shook their head and muttered warnings. The man was a legend. The stories varied. Some said he had survived a raid by aliens single-handedly. Others said he had fought off entire gangs of outlaws. All agreed on one thing. He was dangerous, feared, and had been locked away in Blackreach for good reason. Alara swallowed. She had expected difficulty, but not this. Still, she reminded herself, it was for Joran. For her brother, she would face anything. A week later, she was standing outside Block E, the section of Blackreach where Dane was held. Guards in gray exosuits watched her from behind reinforced glass. Their faces were unreadable, but their posture screamed, "Don't even try it." "Miss Quinn," one of them said, scanning her ID with a handheld device. "This is highly unusual. You understand the risks?" "I understand," Alara said. Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. "I want to speak with Dane Rourke. I'm here for the marriage program." The guard looked at her like she was insane. "You want to marry him?" "Yes." He shook his head, muttering under his breath. "Frontier program or not? This is Blackreach. People don't ask for this. You're letting me through, or not?" Alara asked. Her tone was calm, but her gaze was unyielding. After a long pause, the guard sighed. "You have 5 minutes. No contact. Speak through the barrier only." The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a narrow, glassed corridor. On the other side, Dane Rourke stood, tall and broad, with shoulders like carved stone. He had dark hair, and his face bore the faint lines of years in isolation. But what struck Alara most was his eyes, sharp, intelligent, and calculating. Not wild, not animalistic, just waiting. She swallowed again. "Hello," she said. Dane tilted his head, studying her through the barrier. Carrying the weight of someone who had spent years being asked the same question. "I need to survive," Alara said honestly. "My brother, he's sick. I don't have enough credits for his treatment. This program, this marriage, it's the only way I can help him." Dane's eyes didn't shift. He said nothing, and the silence grew heavy. "You're not going to refuse me?" she asked finally, a hint of nervousness in her voice. He remained quiet. Then, after a long pause, he asked again. "Why?" "Because I have no choice," she said, straightening her shoulders. "And because someone has to protect him, someone has to try. I am that someone." Dane's lips pressed together. Finally, he said, "People usually run from Blackreach, not ask to marry someone inside it." "I'm not like most people," Alara said softly. He studied her for a long moment. then looked away toward the dark mountains beyond. For the first time, Alara thought she saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a recognition, perhaps even respect. "I'll hear you out," he said at last. 5 minutes. Make it worth my time." Alara nodded, her pulse quickening. She took a deep breath and began explaining everything: the program, her brother's illness, the promise of a better future if she succeeded. She spoke with honesty, with hope, with determination, and slowly, Dane listened. When she finished, the silence returned. The barrier between them was cold and strong, but it felt less like a wall now, and more like a challenge. "You're brave," Dane said finally. "Or maybe foolish. But I'll give you this. Few people ever come here and speak straight to me." Alara allowed herself a small smile. "I don't have the luxury of being careful." Dane leaned back, crossing his massive arms. "Then, I suppose we'll see if that bravery lasts." At that moment, alarms echoed faintly from the lower levels of Blackreach. A seismic tremor shook the ground, so gentle that most people would barely notice it, but not Dane. His eyes flicked toward the mountains with immediate attention, and he spoke quietly, almost to himself. "It's starting." Alara frowned. "Starting what?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked back at her, his gaze steady and unreadable. "You should know something," he said finally. "Life in the mountains isn't like life in the domes. You don't get second chances here. Not if you aren't prepared." "I'm prepared," she said, more firmly than she felt. "Words," he said, almost a whisper. "We'll see if they matter." The 5 minutes ended too quickly. A guard stepped forward, indicating she had to leave. Alara turned, but her eyes stayed on Dane. She had expected fear, or cruelty, or indifference. What she hadn't expected was curiosity, and maybe, just maybe, a chance. As she walked back toward the exit, she couldn't stop thinking about his words. "We'll see if they matter." It struck her that Dane Rourke was not what the stories said he was. There was something else there, something strong, something human. By the time she reached the transport lift, the suns had disappeared completely, leaving only the glowing domes below. And as the lift carried her away from Blackreach, Alara made a quiet promise to herself. No matter what happened, she would make this work, because for the first time in weeks, she felt hope. And hope, she knew, was stronger than fear. The next morning, the twin suns of Ecclestone barely touched the horizon, spilling pale light over the jagged mountains. Alara Quinn sat in her small transport cabin, staring at her reflection in the polished metal walls. The memory of Dane Rourke's cold, watchful eyes haunted her. Every story she had ever heard about him, every warning, every fearful whisper felt suddenly shallow. He wasn't a monster. He was something else entirely. She pressed her palm to the wall, wishing she could somehow reach across the miles that separated them. The thought made her shiver. Blackreach wasn't just a prison. It was a world apart, a place designed to erase hope and bury secrets. And Dane was at its center. Her communicator beeped, breaking her thoughts. It was a secure channel from the Frontier Marriage Program office. "Miss Quinn," a clipped voice said. "We've received confirmation. Dane Rourke has agreed, in principle, to participate in the program. You will be given another session with him tomorrow. Make the most of it." Alara's heart skipped. "In principle?" she asked. "Do not worry," the voice said. "He is complicated. But if you approach him correctly, you may succeed." "Do not worry," Alara frowned at the vague response. Complicated? That was the understatement of the century. She had only spoken 5 minutes with Dane, and already she sensed layers she could not reach. The following day, she returned to Blackreach. The corridor leading to Block E felt colder this time, as if the mountains themselves disapproved of her presence. The guard who escorted her seemed uneasy, glancing toward the mountain peaks as they walked. "You should not get too close," he said quietly. "Not emotionally. He doesn't trust people easily." "I understand," Alara replied. Yet, As she approached Dane's cell, her palms were clammy. She wasn't just nervous. She was curious about the man behind the fearsome reputation. Dane stood at the center of the cell, silent and still, almost as if he had been waiting for her. His eyes flicked up, meeting hers. There was no warmth, no mockery. Only observation. "You're back," he said. "Do you always return when it's inconvenient?" Alara laughed softly, despite the tension. "I return when it matters." He arched a brow, but said nothing. The silence stretched between them like a thin rope, fragile but strong. Finally, she asked, "Why are you here? Why Blackreach?" Dane's expression hardened. "Because they wanted someone to fear." Alara blinked. "Fear?" "Yes," he said, leaning slightly forward. "They built me up in stories, in whispers, in legends. And then they locked me away. They said it was punishment. But really, it was containment." Alara frowned. "Containment? You mean, for something you did?" Dane shook his head. "No, for something I know." Her curiosity sharpened. "Something you know?" He leaned back, crossing his massive arms. "When the colonies first contacted the alien world in the northern system, I was part of the research teams. Not just research, defense. I was trained to protect humanity against threats most people don't even know exist." Alara's breath caught. Alien threats. That sounded like something out of the history books she had studied. "And?" she asked softly. "And it failed," Dane said, his voice low. "Or so they told the public. In truth, there are things buried beneath Blackreach. Things no one has touched for decades. Things that are waking up." Alara's mind raced. "Waking up?" "Yes," Dane said, his gaze turning toward the jagged ceiling of his cell. "Something alien, something that doesn't belong. And when it stirs, the mountains themselves will tremble." She swallowed hard. The stories of Blackreach seemed suddenly insufficient. What she had believed about Dane, that he was dangerous, unpredictable now, seemed like an exaggeration. He was not a monster. He was a sentinel, abandoned and misunderstood. "You've been guarding them?" she asked, more in awe than fear. Dane's eyes flicked toward her. "Guarding them? Perhaps. Or waiting. Waiting for someone to notice. Waiting for someone who could understand." Alara took a deep breath. "And you think that someone is me?" He said nothing, but the silence was almost an answer. The guard finally interrupted. "Time is up." Alara hesitated. "One more thing," she said quickly. "What exactly is beneath Blackreach?" Dane looked at her as if measuring her resolve. "You would not survive if I told you everything. But you might survive if you help." "Help how?" she asked. "You have a skill I need," Dane said. "Alien languages, symbols, codes, patterns. You might be the first human in decades who can read what lies beneath these walls." Alara's heart raced. "You mean the ancient chambers?" He nodded. "Exactly. And I think they are waking for a reason. Something is coming." She swallowed. "Why didn't anyone tell me this?" Dane's lips pressed together. "Because most people aren't ready for the truth. But you might be." Back in her transport cabin, Alara replayed the encounter in her mind. Dane Rourke was not the dangerous mountain man the stories suggested. He was something more, a guardian of secrets humanity had forgotten, or perhaps had been forbidden to know. And he was asking for her help. Her thoughts drifted to Joran. Her brother's life was fragile, but he depended on her. Could she risk herself, possibly even life and freedom, to help this man and uncover the secrets of Blackreach? Her answer was clear. Yes. The next day, Alara returned to the mountain again. This time, Dane did not speak at first. He walked along the perimeter of his cell, studying the walls, the ceiling, the subtle vibrations in the structure. "Alara," he said finally, "do you see this?" She looked at the walls. There were faint markings, almost like scratches, etched into the metal and stone. At first, they seemed random. But then, as she leaned closer, she noticed a pattern. I think these are symbols, she whispered. Alien symbols. Dane nodded. They are old, older than the colonies, and they are trying to communicate, or warn. Her fingers itched to touch the markings, to trace the lines, to decode them. Why haven't they done anything? She asked. Because, Dane said slowly, they need a human who can understand them. And they need someone who can act before it's too late. Ilara's mind raced. Act? Against what? Dane's jaw tightened. Against what humans barely remember exists. Against what humans are not ready to fight. But perhaps, with your skill, we have a chance. Ilara swallowed. Fear fluttered in her chest. But alongside it, excitement grew. For the first time in her life, she felt she had a purpose, bigger than survival. Then we start, she said, trying to sound confident. Dane's eyes softened, just slightly. Yes, he said, we start. But remember, the walls here are not just stone. They are history. They are warning. And they are alive. In their own way. Ilara nodded, though she didn't fully understand. Then I'll learn them. You must, Dane said quietly. Because the mountains don't forgive mistakes. And the things beneath them are patient. But not forever. As she left Blackreach that evening, the suns had dipped behind the horizon once again. The colony lights flickered below, small and fragile against the mountain's shadow. But for Ilara, the fear that had gripped her a week ago had been replaced with determination. She was going back. She would learn. She would help Dane. And she would survive, not just for herself, but for Joran, for humanity, and for the secrets buried in Blackreach. Because something was waking in the mountains, something old, something powerful. And Ilara Quinn was no longer a bystander. She was part of it now. The morning air was sharp and cold as Ilara Quinn made her way back to Blackreach. The twin suns had barely risen, casting a silver glow on the jagged mountain peaks. Even from a distance, the prison looked impossible to scale, like a fortress carved from the very rock itself. Yet today, Ilara felt a strange pull. She was not just curious, she was determined. When she arrived at Block E, the guard nodded silently, escorting her along the narrow corridor to Dane's cell. Today, the air was different. There was a tension in the walls, a subtle vibration she could feel through the floor. Dane noticed it immediately. You feel that? He asked, his voice calm but edged with alertness. Ilara nodded. A tremor? Not exactly, Dane said, pacing slowly. The mountains are waking. Something beneath us, stirring. Ilara shivered. The thought was exciting, terrifying, and utterly surreal. She had known there were secrets under Blackreach, but she had never imagined the mountains themselves might be alive, or at least, responsive. Why now? She asked. Dane stopped, his gaze fixed on the faint, alien symbols etched along the walls. Because someone or something wants attention. The patterns are changing. They respond to us. And if we do not understand them, it could be dangerous. Ilara leaned closer, tracing a symbol with her finger. It pulsed faintly beneath her touch, as if acknowledging her presence. They're alive, she whispered, almost like they're trying to communicate. Yes, Dane said quietly. And I think they chose the wrong time to awaken. The colonies below are not prepared for what's coming. For hours, Ilara and Dane worked together, decoding the alien markings. They discovered that the symbols were a kind of warning system, messages from an ancient civilization that had once lived on Echostone. The markings described devices buried deep in the mountain, designed to detect energy signatures. The messages were clear. Something massive is approaching, and the mountain will respond to protect or resist it. Ilara's heart raced. What happens if the mountain resists? Dane's expression darkened. It could collapse parts of Blackreach. The tunnels could seal themselves. Or worse, the energy could affect the colonies below. Just as Alara was about to ask another question, the building trembled violently. The lights flickered, and the air was filled with a low humming that vibrated through her chest. "Mountains," Dane said, his voice tight. "It's starting." Alarms blared throughout the prison, echoing through the stone corridors. Guards shouted, but most were too far to notice the subtle, alien signals Dane had been monitoring. The tremor grew stronger, shaking loose dust and small rocks from the ceiling. Alara grabbed onto the railing for support, her pulse racing. "Stay calm," Dane ordered, moving toward the center of his cell. His presence was steady, like an unmovable rock. "Follow my lead. Listen carefully. Remember, etched. Typical Danger Foller. Remember with. Center 47. Remember with. Typical Dane." Alara nodded, trying to trust him even as the walls seemed to vibrate with life. Dane gestured toward a panel embedded in the wall, covered with more alien symbols. "This is the key," he said. "I need you to read it. If we can understand the sequence, we can stabilize the tremor." Alara approached the panel, her fingers trembling as she traced the glowing inscriptions. They shifted under her touch, forming patterns that almost seemed intelligent. She muttered quietly, "It's like a language and a map at the same time. I've never seen anything like it." "You can do it," Dane said firmly. "I've seen what you're capable of. Focus." Minutes passed as Alara worked. The tremors grew stronger, but she refused to panic. Slowly, piece by piece, she translated the symbols, unlocking the sequence hidden in the mountain's memory. Her mind raced as she realized the panels were not just messages, they were controls, designed to regulate energy flows beneath Blackreach. I think I have it," she exclaimed. "The mountain, it wants balance. We just need to redirect the energy." Dane nodded, guiding her hands. "Do it." Alara pressed the final symbol into the panel. A soft hum spread through the walls, and the tremor began to ease. The low vibration subsided into a gentle pulse, like a heartbeat. She looked up at Dane, her eyes wide. "It worked," she whispered. Dane allowed himself a faint nod. "For now. But this is only the beginning. Whatever is waking beneath us, it is far older than Blackreach, far stronger than anyone imagined, and it knows we are here." The tremor had another effect. The guards, who had been panicking, now noticed the strange energy in the walls. They hesitated, unsure whether to call for reinforcements or flee. Dane turned to Alara. "We have to leave," he said. "Now. This place is unstable, and if the mountain decides to seal itself, no one gets out alive." Alara nodded. "The doors are all locked. They won't hold for long," Dane said. "Follow me, and stay close." With precise movements, Dane led her through hidden corridors he had memorized over years of confinement. The tremors continued, but they moved with purpose, almost guiding their steps. Alara felt her fear slowly shift into exhilaration. She had never felt more alive. Finally, they reached a reinforced door, marked with more alien symbols. Dane pressed his hand against it, and the markings glowed, then faded. The door slid open, revealing a narrow passage that led outside the prison walls. Alara stepped into the cold mountain air, gasping. The suns had risen fully now, bathing the peaks in soft gold. Below, the colony lights flickered like distant stars, and above them, the mountain seemed almost alive, pulsing faintly with energy. "Are we safe?" she asked, her voice trembling. "For now," Dane said. "But the mountain is not done. It never rests. And whatever stirs beneath it will not wait for anyone." Alara looked at him, awe mixed with curiosity. "I don't understand why you've been left here all this time. You're not a monster. You're something else entirely." Dane's eyes softened. "I was built to protect, not to punish. The stories were designed to make people fear me, to keep them away from the truth. But now, The truth is awake. And it needs help. Ilara swallowed, feeling a strange sense of destiny. Then we'll help it, she said firmly. Together. Dane allowed a small, approving nod. Yes. Together. As they descended from the mountain, the tremors began to fade. But the symbols etched into the rocks glimmered faintly, as if watching them, testing them. Ilara realized that Blackreach was not just a prison, it was a living, breathing guardian of knowledge. And now, she and Dane were part of its story. The descent was not easy. The mountain paths were steep, and the air was thin. But Dane moved with a purpose, and Ilara followed, her determination growing with every step. For the first time, she felt a connection not just to Dane, but to something far larger, something ancient and powerful that humans had almost forgotten. Finally, they reached the base of the mountain. The colony lay below, bright and bustling, unaware of the events unfolding above them. Ilara turned to Dane. "What now?" she asked. "Now," Dane said. "We prepare. Because whatever stirred today, it will not stop. And the colonies need to be ready." Ilara nodded. "Then, we start immediately. Whatever this is, we face it together." For the first time, she felt the weight of fear lift, replaced by purpose. She was not a helpless observer. She was part of something bigger. She was part of a team, an unlikely pair chosen by fate and the mountain itself. And whatever waited beneath Blackreach, she knew one thing for certain. She was not alone. The suns of Echostone rose higher, illuminating the jagged peaks with warm light. Yet, in the shadow of the mountains, ancient powers stirred, and at the heart of it all, a linguist and a mountain man prepared to face the unknown. Together, Ilara Quinn looked at Dane Rourke and whispered, almost to herself, "We can do this." Dane's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "Yes," he said. "We will." And with that, the first true step of their journey had begun. The evening sky over Echostone was painted in hues of deep purple and silver, the twin suns now slipping behind the horizon. From the base of the Blackreach Mountains, the colony glimmered like a small city of lights, unaware of the strange activity above. Ilara Quinn and Dane Rourke stood at the edge of the mountain path, looking up at the peaks that had just trembled beneath them. The faint hum of energy still lingered in the air, vibrating softly through the rock. It was quiet, almost deceptive, but both of them knew the mountains were far from calm. "We need to warn the colonies," Ilara said, her voice firm. "If whatever is beneath Blackreach is awakening, people need to be ready." Dane nodded. "Agreed. But we have limited time. The energy we felt today is just the start. It will grow stronger, and the structures within the mountain will begin to act on their own." Ilara frowned. "Structures? Old alien technology," Dane said. "It's embedded throughout the mountain, and it responds to disturbances. If we don't understand it, it could cause serious problems for anyone nearby." She shivered slightly. The thought of uncharted alien machines waking up beneath the colony was frightening. And yet, she felt a strange thrill. This was her purpose. She would not step back. They made their way down the mountain carefully, Dane leading the way with practiced precision. He had spent years memorizing paths and passages few humans had ever seen. Ilara followed closely, keeping her eyes on the glowing symbols that occasionally appeared on the rock face, remnants of the alien warnings they had uncovered. "Do you ever wonder why you were left here?" Ilara asked softly. "I mean, why no one came for you, or trained others like you?" Dane's expression was thoughtful. "Because most humans are afraid of what they cannot control. I was strong, and they wanted someone to fear. And in fear, people obey rules without asking questions. That's how they contained me." Ilara shook her head. "That's unfair," he shrugged. "Fairness has nothing to do with survival, Ilara. I survived because I had to. And now, you're here. You see the truth." She swallowed, realizing the depth of what he meant. This was not just a prison. Blackreach was a test, a warning, and a secret all in one. And somehow, they were part of it now. As they reached the base of the mountain, a sudden flash of light caught Ilara's attention. From a distance, she saw faint pulses of energy radiating upward from the mountain itself, moving like ripples through the peaks. "What is that?" she whispered. Dane's eyes narrowed. "The alien structures. They're responding to our presence and to each other. It's a network. They communicate, adjust, and protect the mountain. And now, they've noticed the colonies." Ilara's heart raced. "The colonies?" "Yes," Dane said grimly. "The mountain will defend itself against anything it perceives as a threat. If the colonies interfere, or if the energy reaches them, it could be dangerous." They hurried toward the colony, following the winding paths that Dane knew would keep them safe. As they approached the first settlement, small tremors began shaking the buildings. People outside looked up in alarm, unsure what was happening. "Quickly," Dane urged. "We need to stabilize this before it spreads." Ilara nodded, pulling out her portable translation device. She began interpreting the alien symbols she had seen earlier, projecting patterns and sequences onto a holographic display. Each symbol pulsed in rhythm with the mountain, forming a complex network of signals. "It's like a language," she said, "but also like instructions. I think I can redirect the energy, or at least guide it away from the colonies." Dane watched her, impressed. "Do it. I'll keep the perimeter secure. Make sure nothing interferes." As Ilara worked, the tremors grew stronger. Cracks appeared in the roads. Small rocks tumbled from the cliffs, and the hum of energy became louder. Children ran toward their parents, and people crowded in doorways, fearful and confused. But Dane remained calm. His presence was steady, a rock amid chaos. "Focus on the patterns," he instructed. "The mountain reacts to your actions. Guide it. Do not panic." Ilara's fingers moved quickly, tracing symbols on the device, matching the patterns she had memorized from Blackreach. The energy pulses seemed to respond, gradually softening. The cracks in the roads stopped spreading, and the hum shifted from harsh vibration to a steady, manageable rhythm. "Almost there," she whispered, sweat forming on her forehead. Then, without warning, a sharp pulse shot from the mountain, knocking her off balance. She fell to the ground, gasping, and the display flickered. Dane was immediately beside her. "Are you all right?" he asked, steadying her with a strong hand. Yes," she said, breathing heavily. "But it's stronger than I thought. The mountain. It's alive, and it's testing us." He nodded. "It's testing humans too. Let's show it we are worthy." With Dane supporting her, Ilara returned to the device. She took a deep breath and focused, channeling all her knowledge of the symbols, all her understanding of the patterns, and all her willpower into guiding the mountain's energy. Slowly, carefully, she aligned the pulses, forming a pattern that the mountain recognized. The tremors began to subside. The energy pulses softened. The air grew calm again. People in the colony looked up in wonder, seeing the mountain glowing faintly as though acknowledging their presence. Ilara collapsed on the ground, exhausted but triumphant. Dane knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said quietly. "We did it," she corrected, smiling despite her fatigue. He allowed a small nod, a rare moment of approval. "Yes, together." For a moment, they both simply watched the mountain. It seemed to pulse faintly, almost like a heartbeat, responding to their presence. Ilara realized something. The mountain was not hostile. It was protective. It was ancient, yes, and powerful, but it was not evil. And now, it recognized humans who respected it. "This is only the beginning," Dane said finally. "The mountain will continue to test us. And there may be more. Surprises. But we've shown it we can understand. That's important." Ilara nodded, feeling a strange mixture of awe and relief. "Then we keep going. We learn more. We prepare." Dane's eyes softened. And for the first time, He allowed a faint smile. Yes. We prepare. And we do it together. Whatever comes next, we face it as a team. Alara felt a warmth spread through her chest. For weeks, she had feared Dane. Now, she trusted him completely. They were no longer the lonely woman and the feared mountain man. They were partners bound by purpose and mutual respect. As the suns dipped fully below the horizon, the colony lights flickered on, casting a gentle glow across the mountainside. The alien energy continued to pulse faintly, but it was calm now, almost gentle, as if acknowledging that humans could rise to meet its challenge. Alara turned to Dane. I understand now. The mountain is not against us. It's a guardian, and it wants humans who can think, who can guide it. That's why it chose us. Dane looked at her, expression unreadable but not cold. Perhaps it's just beginning to notice that humans are different, capable of things even it did not expect. Alara laughed softly. Then we better be ready. Yes, Dane said. We better be ready. Because whatever tests are coming, they will be bigger. And the colonies will need us. As the night deepened, the hum of energy faded to a gentle rhythm. For the first time, both of them felt a sense of calm, not because the danger was gone, but because they were ready. Together, they had faced the mountain's challenge. And together, they would face whatever came next. The suns of Echostone had risen high, casting a golden light over the jagged peaks of the Blackreach Mountains. From the colonies below, the mountain appeared calm, silent, almost ordinary. But Alara Quinn and Dane Rourke knew better. The tremors from the previous day had been only the beginning. The alien structures embedded deep in the mountain were awakening fully now, and the energy pulses had begun spreading farther, reaching toward the settlements. People were noticing roads cracked, lights flickered, and strange patterns appeared in the sky above the peaks. Alara adjusted the holographic display on her translation device. Symbols glowed and shifted, forming patterns that were increasingly complex. Dane stood behind her, his large hands resting on the device frame, observing the sequences. We have less than 24 hours before the pulses reach the central colony, Dane said. His voice was calm but firm. If the energy is not redirected, it could overwhelm the power grids and communication systems. People could panic. Alara nodded. I think I can use the symbols to guide it. The mountain listens to patterns it recognizes. If we can form a strong enough signal, it might stabilize on its own. Then we don't waste time, Dane said. The two of them worked tirelessly, using portable projectors and holographic displays to interpret and replicate the alien symbols. Alara's fingers moved quickly, adjusting sequences as Dane called out the mountain's subtle responses. It's like a conversation, Alara said. I send a pattern, and it responds. If we're wrong, it shifts. Maybe even resists. Dane nodded. Exactly. But it also recognizes humans who think, who try, who adapt. That's what makes us different. That's why it's letting us guide it. Hours passed, and the energy pulses continued to ripple through the mountain. The tremors were subtle now but constant, like the pulse of a living being. People in the colonies watched with curiosity rather than fear. News crews tried to interpret the strange lights above Blackreach, while miners and engineers below began noticing changes in the magnetic fields and energy readings. Alara realized something remarkable. Humans, observing carefully and working together, could match the intelligence of the mountain. Not in strength, but in thought. Humans had a quality the alien structures recognized: creativity, reasoning, and adaptability. By late afternoon, the pulses had grown strong enough to affect communications. Colony transmitters flickered, screens went blank, and emergency lights blinked on. People began to gather, unsure what was happening. Panic was possible, but Dane and Alara were ready. We need to show the mountain we are not a threat, Dane said, but also that we are capable of understanding it. Alara nodded, hands moving quickly over her device. She replicated the most complex pattern she had decoded, aligning it with the mountain's own energy frequency. The hum in the air responded immediately, shifting from a low vibration to a steady, gentle pulse. Dane watched intently, Keep it steady. Don't let it drift. Ilara focused, her mind completely on the patterns. The energy pulses began to slow, stabilizing above the mountain peaks. The flickering lights in the colony steadied. People paused, watching in awe as the mountain seemed to glow faintly, almost like a heartbeat. It's working, Ilara whispered. Dane's eyes softened slightly. Yes. But the mountain is testing more than the energy. It is testing humanity itself. From the edge of the colony, scientists, engineers, and volunteers began assisting, guided remotely by Ilara and Dane. People formed teams, observing patterns and communicating adjustments. Every action, every decision, was part of the mountain's trial. Ilara realized that the frontier marriage program, which had brought her here, was insignificant compared to what she was witnessing. Humans, ordinary people, were working in unison with a living alien intelligence. Their collective intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation were exactly what the mountain needed to see. This is incredible, she whispered to Dane. He nodded. It's what humans are capable of when they work together. Fear does not make us strong. Understanding does. And you brought that understanding here. Ilara smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. She had started this journey to save her brother, to survive. Now, she was part of something much bigger. A first contact, a cooperative moment between humans and an ancient alien presence. As evening approached, the mountain pulsed steadily. The energy stabilized completely, and the tremors stopped. The sky above the peaks glimmered with faint lights, patterns that seemed to acknowledge human efforts. People in the colony cheered quietly, not fully understanding why, but sensing that something extraordinary had occurred. Children pointed toward the mountain. Adults whispered in excitement, and engineers took notes feverishly, realizing they had witnessed a breakthrough unlike any in recorded history. Ilara leaned against Dane. "We did it," she said softly. He looked at her, a rare smile forming. "No, Ilara. Humans did it. We guided them. Yes. But the colonies, everyone worked together. That's why it responded. That's why we succeeded." Ilara felt tears prick her eyes. I never imagined humans could do something like this. Not just survive, but connect, understand, and cooperate. And all of us together." Dane's gaze softened. "That's what makes humanity strong. Not strength or weapons. Intelligence, creativity, teamwork. That's why we will always endure." As the night fell over Echostone, the mountain glowed faintly, calm and serene. The energy pulses had subsided, leaving a subtle rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Ilara looked at Dane, her heart full of admiration and gratitude. "I should have been afraid of you," she said quietly. "But now, I see the truth. You weren't a monster. You were waiting for someone who could understand." Dane's expression softened, almost shyly. "And you were that someone," Ilara smiled. "Then, about that proposal?" Dane raised an eyebrow, and a small, amused smile appeared. "Yes? 8. Marry me, please," she said. Her voice gentle but firm. For the first time, Dane did not hesitate. He stepped closer, the barrier of fear and legend dissolving completely. "Yes," he said simply. "We face the future together, and I will marry you." The colony continued its quiet celebrations below, but for Ilara and Dane, the world had changed. They had witnessed humanity's potential in its purest form, not through conflict, not through survival against odds, but through intelligence, cooperation, and understanding. The mountain had tested them, but humans had passed, and in doing so, they had proved something greater. That humanity could rise to challenges that no one had imagined. That they could meet the unknown with courage and wisdom, and that they could find allies even in the most unlikely forms. Ilara looked at Dane, feeling a sense of hope and certainty she had never known. "Whatever comes next," she said, "we'll face it together." "Yes," Dane said, "together." And as the twin moons of Echostone rose, Bathing the mountains in silver light, Elara realized that this was not the end. It was only the beginning of a partnership, of discovery, and of humanity reaching for the stars, stronger and wiser than ever before.